Welcome to Main Street Minds with your host, Amish Munshi. This is where industry leaders and seasoned pros share their secrets to success beyond limits. Let's dive in.
Hi, welcome to Main Street Minds. Today we have a very special guest, Nick Relations. Thanks for coming on a busy Friday. I know the world is keeping us really, really busy right now with so many things to do, and the transformations happening across the whole world right now, and especially in tech, right? So without any delay, I'll open up the floor and I'll let Nick introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, I really appreciate you inviting me on the podcast. Been looking forward to it for the past few days. So, as you said, I'm Nicholas. I own and operate a managed security and services company here based in Vermont. And we are your outsourced IT department, right? So, we work with businesses typically in the 10 to 15 user range that have a need for IT services and an IT department, but sometimes can't afford or justify a full time staff.
Yeah, makes sense. And so, what does a day-to-day look like? Like, do you have to like go down to the client offices, or are you able to manage this remotely now?
Yeah, I'm glad you actually asked that question because a lot of people ask, like, what's it like being, in running an IT company? And I say it's the best job because every day is different.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what day you might be working with a franchisee in the morning. You might be working with a law firm in the afternoon. It could be just doing playing around with new technology. So it's one of those careers that it's really as much as you want to make out of it, right? Just kind of like anything.
Hmm.
But no day is the same. Every day is always different, always dealing with different challenges, problems in businesses. But one of the really nice things is that it's constantly evolving, right? You get to work with different businesses, learn about their business, they learn about your business, and then you get to grow together. It's amazing.
Perfect. And how do you approach a client? Let's say the client has individuals working together, they're trying to do things. There might be somebody who is their in-house tech expert, probably like somebody just tries to make things work. If
Yeah.
in that sort of an environment, how do you approach it? Like, do you implement some systems first, like ticketing systems, processes? Like, how do you approach like getting some sanity in a new
Yeah.
business, right?
Yeah, so it's very common when we engage with a customer for the first time that kind of like you had said, there's someone doing some level of tech. It might be, an employee that is just not afraid, to do some level of technology, or they're just trying to just get by Googling things.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
typically what happens when we go into a new business, it's a lot of listening, a lot of asking questions, and
Hmm.
just explain what you folks do on a daily basis. How do you work? What systems do you use in place? And during that conversation, during that discovery, it's where you start identifying the holes, right? It's like, oh, well, we print this off and then we scan it and we give it to this person. It's like, well, hold on a second. Why are you doing that process? And sometimes they're just like, I don't know. It's
Hmm.
just what we've always done. So it's
Yeah.
looking at their process kind of from the top down, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and then bringing in our expertise to make sure that their systems are protected, they're backed
Yeah.
up. People are not afraid of technology.
Hmm.
Very process driven approach where you want each company to, obviously you want them to function the way that they need to function, but you
Yeah.
also want to have standards in place, right? When you have thousands of endpoints that you're managing, you can't have these one-off islands worth of technology. It has to be the same across the boat to really make it
Hmm.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you see like having like what sort of an architecture do you see commonly? Like, is it like one common system, one complicated system that's able to do like multiple different things, like a Salesforce or something, or is
Yeah,
it like still very specializing for each function?
it depends. Each business is very unique, especially when we go in. They might be most of the businesses that we work with are not using Salesforce. Might be more of like a HubSpot type setup.
Hmm.
But CRM is a CRM at the end of the day. But we're a big Microsoft partner. We've been
Hmm.
working with Microsoft for years, so we like to get people into the Office 365 environment, Microsoft Azure. And then we can leverage our skills and kind of the
Hmm.
policies that we've developed with other people to help solidify their technology and maximize their spend. One of the
Yeah.
biggest things that we like to do when we go into a new customer site is, what do you have that's on premise, right? Do you have servers, networking
Hmm.
equipment? Let's get that stuff out of there, because, we don't want to be reliant on a building being accessible or power for critical lines of business, right?
Hmm.
So taking a look at what they're doing, what they're using, how they're using it, and then making sure that when things happen, they're protected, right? That's the way that the world works. You
Yeah.
have to be ready for anything.
Yeah, and I think cloud has made it a lot more easier to kind of not worry about the infrastructure, right? Like focus on the business. But obviously still it still needs to be managed. Like it's not just running by itself. There is still so much that has to be done.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So do you also do like some custom development on top of the CRMs or applications and on the Microsoft frameworks?
Yeah, we do some level. So we're a big fan of not coding or custom architecting yourself into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a time for middleware and, integration with different pieces of software, but you want it to be simple, easy, and reliable. So if something's not working, you're not looking
Mm-hmm.
in 15 different places
Yeah.
as to why it's not working. So using a lot of pre-built Microsoft technologies, leveraging technologies that work together. And one of, the very common things with businesses that we work with is using something like QuickBooks Online, T-Sheets for timesheet entry,
Mm-hmm.
Gusto for payroll. All those systems really, really integrate well. And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's a misnomer in the tech industry. It's just a checkbox, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a checkbox. But really, with some of these technologies that we use, the integration really is a checkbox. And that's what you need, especially when you're a business of 10 or 15 or 20 people. You don't want to be stuck in the minutia of why
Yeah.
files aren't moving correctly from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So, in terms of complexity, like where do you like what kind of businesses do you see are more tech heavy versus like less tech heavy? Like, is there a spectrum of businesses?
I would say that, regardless of the business type, they're using some level of tech, right? You have to.
Mm-hmm.
But it depends on the type of industry that you're in. One thing that we're seeing with like brick and mortar retail is a heavy move to just iPhones and iPads. No,
Mm-hmm.
like large point of sale equipment, utilizing, Square, Lightspeed, a lot of these
Yeah.
large POS vendors. But then you get into, maybe like a law firm that is very document heavy, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
need, to be able to move virtual paper around.
Yeah.
So the technology is different from each vendor, or excuse me, from each client to each client, but there's still kind of those fundamental building blocks that everyone
Yeah.
relies on. It's like if the internet is down, it's like almost like you can't do business, right?
Yeah.
That's where we've come to. We're so reliant on the internet for every aspect of our daily lives.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, like just the network and the tech being so important, like do you implement something on the cybersecurity aspects as well?
Yeah, so cybersecurity is really what I think most business owners worry about, and if you're not, you should be. And we partner with a company called Sophos. We've been a partner with them for years, just like Microsoft. I might be biased, but we really do believe that Sophos really is the best tool out there,
Hmm.
and that's what we leverage with our customers. And the reason why is, we've seen the value of when there is a cyber incident or ransomware incident, of Sophos being able to contain that.
Hmm.
And that's what you really need to worry about these days, is kind of a multiple layers of security to really protect your business, because the security threat landscape changes, and just the 10 or 15 minutes that we've been talking so far, it's already changed. It's just constantly
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what got you interested in doing this? Like how did you start and how did you reach where you are today?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to someone else about this very similar question a few weeks ago, and I've always been into technology since I was a little kid. I was, would get a new tech toy for Christmas, like a radio or something, and I'd want to take it apart and figure out how it worked and could I make it better, or and maybe my parents didn't like that I was taking apart brand new toys as a kid, but what really propelled me is I've always loved to just be busy, right? Ever since I can remember, I've always loved being busy and working and interacting with people. And I started doing lawn care just as I was very little, in middle school, kind of high school, and doing lawn care, snow removal, things of that nature. And then a lady down the street from my parents was like, hey, like I've got this issue with my computer, do you know anybody? And they're like, oh, my son could probably help you with that. And I think she gave
Yeah.
me, $20 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, like I can make money, like, doing tech. And for me, it's always come easy, and then that was kind of what perpetuated, kind of building a business around technology, but also using technology as a means to help people, right? I feel like we're all on this planet for some reason. And I really enjoy helping people and, learning new technology at the same time.
Nice, nice. So how long have you been doing the current business?
Yeah, so the business that we have right now, we've been operating almost about 20 years, and for a long time it was just myself, and I was doing it kind of as a side gig, side
Hmm.
hustle, and then it keeps growing, 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 almost to the point where it's like a machine, right? Business. We're doing advertising and word of mouth, but you know. A referral from one of your current customers to a new customer is like
Hmm.
worth more than its weight in gold, because that lead coming in is almost pretty much a guarantee. I mean, nothing in
Yeah.
life is a guarantee, but
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. Yeah. So, like, how are you scaling this up right now? Like, I'm sure like there's multiple different customers and like you being
Hmm.
alone, right? You started off being alone, but how are you able to like replicate yourself? Because I'm just focusing back on like a career advice. Like if somebody has to do tech, the biggest problem that ends up happening is everything is stuck in your head, right?
Yeah,
How do you clone yourself and how do you develop processes and systems so that
yeah,
somebody else can do what you were doing and then you
yep.
can focus on more business?
Yeah, documentation and
Mm-hmm.
knowledge transfer is the biggest, especially documentation. And it's very easy when you're just a one person, one
Mm-hmm.
man shop. Just, oh, I'll remember, I'll remember, I'll remember, I'll remember. If you start doing the documentation, even when you just have one client, maybe just one home user, start doing documentation. Something like IT glue is amazing for documentation, but for folks
Mm-hmm.
starting off, that might be too big of something to bite off. So using Microsoft OneNote, just building that documentation and adding in pictures and using some sort of password management and doing standards. That way, when you do hire on additional people or you use vendors or consultants, it's like, hey, I'm going to such and such client. What do they have here? It's like, oh, here's all the documentation that we have. Give the documentation once over, see if you have any questions, and then obviously make yourself available for questions. But
Mm-hmm.
doing that cookie cutter mentality of setting up each client as simple as possible. And it's twofold, right? For when you replicate yourself and you hire additional
Yeah.
people so that everybody is set up the same way. But as you grow, you can't have non-standard
Mm-hmm.
setups. It's a nightmare in terms of support. So I think documentation is the biggest thing, and no
Mm-hmm.
one likes doing documentation just in general. But
Yeah.
documentation is the biggest thing, and then repeatable standards coupled with automation. So
Mm-hmm.
we were five people, including myself, but there's almost a sixth person, and that's almost that full-time employee is just automation. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
can write some automation that you can run 3 or 4 times on 3 or 4 different computers and it runs reliably, there's no reason why you can't run that on 300.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, 2 hours to set up an end user laptop is
Yeah.
10 minutes of clicking and running automations.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool. And so what are some of the trends that you are seeing right now in the marketplace? Like, are you seeing small businesses adopting more of AI? Like, are they actually able to use some of the new things that are coming up?
Yeah, so we're seeing a slower than expected, I think, shift into AI. And I think a lot of it is people's hesitation to use
Mm-hmm.
AI, that, oh, my job is going to be replaced by AI or my employees are going to be replaced by AI. And the way that we like to say is, at least right now, no one's getting replaced by AI. But you can use AI to make your employees that much more efficient so that they can focus on things that matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one wants to do documentation, right? Just as an
Yeah.
example, or just, combing your, competitor's website. So using something like Cassidy to go
Mm-hmm.
out and do, scrape a competitor's website, do research on LinkedIn into
Mm-hmm.
someone. That's what we're really seeing the adoption of AI is to really make employees more efficient. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people look at as AI as the robots are going to take over the world, and maybe they will at someday. I don't know, but looking at how you can use AI in a responsible manner in your business and setting those guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a business and you're not looking at AI, you're not thinking about it, you're scared of it, you're going to get left behind. That's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest piece of advice that I can give to anybody is start looking at AI yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, and there's just every single day there's just so many new AI tools that are coming up. So
Mm-hmm.
apart from AI, are you seeing any other trends? Like, are you seeing maybe in finance, if you have any finance related customers or anyone trying to use like blockchain or anything else that's like different?
No, not a lot of blockchain adoption, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. And I think that I wouldn't say that ship has sailed, but I think it was very heavy blockchain for quite some time during
Yeah.
COVID. And we do see some people trying to adopt it, but I think they're kind of trying to adopt it and they're not really sure why they're adopting it, to be honest with you. But I think, one of the biggest things that we're seeing is obviously the use of AI, but how to work from wherever, right?
Hmm.
So if you're kind of set in this mind shift of everybody has to be in the same office at the same time for the same amount of hours every week, you're eliminating a huge talent pool already because not everybody wants to move where headquarters is. And
Hmm.
for a lot of things that we do, a lot of businesses are not in our area, they're on the other side of the United States. So does it matter if a technician is here with me in Vermont or in
Hmm.
Florida or overseas?
Hmm.
And that's what employees want. They want that flexibility, they want to
Yeah.
work wherever. And that's what really high speed internet and
Yeah.
cloud technologies has really propelled for us.
Yeah, I think the technology is already here, right? Like, the location just doesn't matter anymore. Uh,
Correct.
yeah,
Yep.
I just met with somebody that's like doing something very special within AR and VR, and like it was very fascinating. I'll share that in one of the other episodes as well. But yeah, it was very interesting what we are able to do in the virtual space now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some of the ideal customers? Like, do you see like more people within that are already within the framework that of technologies you are using, or do you do more of the migrations? Like, where do you see growth right now?
Yeah, so the ideal candidate or company that we work with is, typically one that is reliant on technology for their
Hmm.
business. And the reason why I say that is when a business is reliant on technology, they're willing to invest money to make that technology
Hmm.
work for them. So there's typically, we used to do a lot of migrations to kind of answer your question, but a lot of people are already using the Microsoft, suite
Hmm.
of products. So it's, going into a business that's willing to spend some money on technology and to increase their technology stack and figuring out either A, what new technology can be brought in, or
Hmm.
B, the technology that they already have, they're already spending money on, and how can they utilize it better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. So yeah, and in terms of a career growth, like what would be one of the advices that you would give to somebody getting started in the industry now?
Yeah, in tech, I think, looking at every aspect of tech and finding out what really speaks to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the example that I always give people is when I was in high school, and really even before that, I'm going to be a developer. I'm going to be a programmer. I'm going to write code all day, every day, and it's going to be great, right? And in high school, I took 2 years of C and C++. I might be
Mm-hmm.
dating myself. I don't know if I say C and C++, but I am glad that I did that in high school because I learned this is not what I want to do for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. So looking at every aspect of technology and what really, speaks to you. Maybe it's programming, maybe it's infrastructure, maybe it's cybersecurity, and not necessarily just honing in on, well, if I'm a developer, I can make, this much money, or, if I do this, I can make this much money.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what you really, really interests you and something that you won't get tired of doing every day. And that's the thing that I really like about managed infrastructure and managed services. It's
Mm-hmm.
always, always different.
Yeah.
And you grow with your clients. Your
Mm-hmm.
clients increase their business, you increase your business, and then you grow together.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how you both grow at the same time.
Yeah, that's one of the most important aspects I've learned over time, saying like where you have to realize like your clients are going to be similar to where you are, right? Like
Mhm.
if the client is growing, then you are growing. If you are growing, then your client is also growing, right?
Correct.
I'm not going to partner with the Costco or a Walmart when I'm a 5-person organization.
Right.
If
Right.
I might be able to partner with them if I have a factory of 5,000 people that's
Right.
able to
Yeah.
produce at the scale at which they are able to sell, right? So the
Yep.
same thing, like the organic growth is magical, right? Like
Yep.
when things grow together.
Yeah, and you want to make sure when you are, working with clients, it's a good fit, right? You want a good fit, you want a good relationship. And, you know, no one likes turning away business, but sometimes, during those discovery sessions or informational calls, if it's not a good fit, it's not a
Mhm.
good fit,
Yeah.
and that's something where, partnering with other technology companies in the area is, we don't really work with veterinarian offices, just as an
Hmm.
example. But
Yeah.
a colleague at another company does. He doesn't really work with restaurants, but we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So it's looking at the other IT vendors in your area, not necessarily as competition, but as
Hmm.
partnering.
Yeah.
It's a small world, so you
Yeah.
want to be able to work with everybody, but there's enough work out there for everybody, and
Right.
having those partnerships is what
Hmm.
really helps your business grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, and where do you see yourself, like the next 5 or 10 years? Like, where do you see in terms of the growth of where tech is headed and where your company is headed?
I think the growth is really in the cybersecurity space and
Hmm.
also in AI.
Hmm.
And it's kind of funny because we're seeing a lot of cyber threats now that are been generated by AI or are
Hmm.
constantly being changed over the course of its lifespan by AI.
Hmm.
So, what everything is is going online. Everything's going virtual, digital, etc. So that cybersecurity practice is the biggest growth vertical that we see for us, but just
Hmm.
also in general. But then there's also AI, of how to leverage AI and how to use AI responsibly. And
Hmm.
those are the two biggest things that in the next 5 years, it's going to be almost exclusively cybersecurity and AI, I think is really
Yeah.
where the industry is going.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a time when it was like on-prem, off-prem, cloud. Like prior to that, we used to be like server client setups, right? I think
Hmm.
now it's about like, yeah, let's use more and more and more tools, but how do we get them to speak with each other in a secure way that
Yep,
and sensible way, right? Like it shouldn't like end up making some weird little decisions for us that are not right.
exactly, exactly. How to make technology, how to leverage it to increase the efficiency of your business.
Hmm.
Hiring is difficult, especially in a state like where we are. There's not a ton of people here.
Hmm.
That's just the deal. So how do you leverage a lot of technology to either hire folks that are outside of your home area
Hmm.
or to make your current workforce more efficient?
Yeah. Sounds great. And are you currently serving customers just locally, or like are you able to like take care of customers across the globe right now?
Yeah, so we work with about 100 businesses across the United States, and
Okay.
only about 20% of our businesses are physically here local to
Okay.
us.
Okay.
So the vast majority of our business is actually in Southern California, outside
Okay.
of the state, and that's because businesses are not necessarily reliant on, hey, this is my office space, or,
Mhm.
or 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 this is where we're going to be located. It's more of, this is our office address. It's like a WeWork or a shared
Yeah.
office space, and then we have employees in 15 different states.
hmm Makes sense. Cool. Sounds great. So, any just before we depart, any other final words that you would like to share with the audience?
I think, for anybody that's looking to get into technology, it's a great industry. It's a fast-paced industry. There's a lot of room for growth, and there's also a lot of room for, different types of technologies that you can use, and it's never boring. So if
Mhm.
you're someone that likes constant innovation, constant learning, um, learning under sometimes very stressful situations, technology is great. And as a byproduct of being in technology, you can also make a very nice living too.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that is really true. Like I think part of success of where I am today, I completely put it back on my tech. The success is in being a tech professional, right? So
Yeah,
that allowed me to leap forward, like have my financial base in place, and then move ahead into doing something new.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sounds great. So what's the best way somebody can reach you?
So I probably put like website address in the description,
Yeah.
and then website is probably the best. That has a contact form to get a hold of us.
Okay.
If you're looking just to chat, always happy to chat with people that are thinking about getting into the industry. And if you're a company that is looking for IT services, always happy to chat. And kind of like I had said a few minutes ago, if it's a good fit, awesome. If it's not a good fit, then that's okay too, right? You want to make sure that everybody is comfortable when you're entering into any sort of business relationship.
Yeah, that's the reason for a discovery call. Saying let's ensure like we are doing the right thing.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
sounds great. Thanks, Nick, for joining on a busy Friday. I really appreciate it, and have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Main Street Minds. Want to share your journey with our audience? Head over to mainstreetmindspodcast.com/guest to apply.